Yar, the ship should be here somewhere.
Uh, Captain, are you sure you know where we're going?
Of course I do. I've never been lost in all my life. Captain, we've got movement in the water. Oh no! It's a giant enemy crab!
And let's build this crab. The basic structure is this gravy tin, and the base is this cork coaster. Using some sandpaper, I start off by just roughing up the surface of the gravy container. I then mark out and cut out the opening door that will allow miniatures to sit inside. This container is great to work with because of the cardboard structure. Really makes it easy to cut into and glue things to. I place the container on a piece of paper and sketch out what I imagine the legs to look like. The most important part here is it's giving me the size of the legs, which will be made with skewers. I use super glue to keep the joints together and sprinkle on some bicarbonate soda just to instantly strengthen that bond. I use some small gears on the joints later on, so it hides that bond pretty well. I made this paper template, which I used to cut out 6 legs. Make sure to have a very, very sharp blade here, so you get really nice clean cuts. Now, the strangest thing about the apparatus of Kalawish is not that it is a tank that looks like a crab. No, that's perfectly normal. It's the fact that it has a 30-foot movement speed with 6 legs, whereas a pirate with a peg leg also has a 30-foot movement speed. A pirate could outrun the tank has 6 legs. Anyway, sharp blade. And sharp blade, sharp legs. On all the rounded edges, I come through and make it look like they're really sharp and menacing. That they could really tear through a little pirate boy. With both parts of the legs done, I come through, drill holes down, so that way you can easily place them in. I go through and do this on both sides in the exact same spot. It is now that I realize it's not going to fit on the base. At least not sitting flat down. So that's where I come up with the idea of it having to climb up on something, which I think is a lot cooler. I cut some lengths of the mandatory paper straws and add them to give a bit more interest to the joints where the legs meet and to hide up any yucky seams. All the legs get a good drill in, so that way they'll fit onto their joints. And now I start building up what the crab will be climbing up on top of. It's pretty difficult to continue making the crab if I don't know what sort of pose it's going to be in, so I thought I might as well just build the base now. Using an old Underdark stalagmite that I built, I add that to look kind of like a piece of coral or some underground rocks. I use a skewer and PVA glue to hold that in place. I think that's a good structure to start with. There is a channel around the lid of the gravy container, and I just fill that with a bunch of spackle. That gives a really cool texture, as well as just filling in all of the gap as well. I then cut out a piece of hard plastic a bit larger than the door, and that will go over the top to hold it in place. And now to build the floor, the deck, the place where they will stand, and I make this out of foam core. I cut out a piece that is roughly the same size as the interior, and then I have to cut it down because it's too big. The hole is too small. It doesn't fit. I should have thought of that. And once I have a piece that does fit, I put a piece of builder's tape over the top to give us that metallic tessellated floor look. Glue that in and put a little back to cover the exposed hole. I then use some coffee stir sticks to cover up the transitions, and they look like some metal banding. Now this is kind of steampunky, so I glue a bunch of gears to the back. I have no idea what the gears do. They probably spin. Your guess is as good as mine. In fact, what do the gears do? Let me know, and that will be canon. Every underwater creature needs telescopic eyes. If you don't have telescopic eyes, what's the point? I take these telescopic straws and I glue in some Lego studs and then make little caps for them. So that way they don't get rained on or something. And the telescopic eyes add a lot of emotiveness to this machine, which is a bit worrying. It's a bit weird, but it's cool. And then I add a lot more gears. But these gears, I have got an idea. These gears operate the eyes, so the gears turn, the eyes go up and down. I thought a little bit about what these did. I got this little piece of plastic from the lid of a plastic water bottle, and that will serve as the front window of the piece. The little vent at the front. And then I use some cut up skewers to make the bars of the vent. I lost the footage of this, but I made some of the legs a bit different, so that way it would fit climbing up the structure. I don't know why I put this on foam core. I should have just put it on a piece of chipboard. But after cutting the foam core away, I can then glue it onto the front nice and flush. And it looks like the gears are like coming out from behind it, which is kind of cool. I then use ear cleaners, cut them up into a bunch of little rivets, and super glue them literally all over the place, like everywhere. Anywhere a rivet would go. It's very fiddly. Now the instruction manual of the apparatus of Calowish says that there is a window on the side, so I decided to make that window using a piece of chipboard, and I've got some zip ties that have a really cool texture on them, and I'll put those all over on either side, and we have a really cool looking window. The instruction manual also says that there is a tail at the back to propel the apparatus while it is swimming. So I use a cool looking Yakult bottle, stick in the lid of a spray bottle as well, and that gets some really cool shapes, and put that in an upturned milk lid, and to complete the tail, I glue in this little plastic seashell. By all known laws of propulsion, the crab tank shouldn't be able to swim. Its little tail is too small for its fat body. It, of course, swims anyway, because it doesn't care what us humans think. The instructions mention nothing about an exhaust port. But everywhere, every single picture has an exhaust port. I don't know why you need an exhaust port underwater, but I make mine with a straw and a little plastic piece of a pen. Despite no efforts up to this point, the crab is not standing on its own. It's like it's not real. So I drill a hole in the bottom and put a skewer to hold it up. And then glue in all of the legs, using PVA glue because super glue will melt through the foam. The final piece of the puzzle before finishing basing and painting is the claws. I sketched out roughly what I think the claws would look like and cut them out of foam as well. I used the same methods to attach them to the body as I did with the legs. I really disliked how the closed claw looked, so I opened it up, make sure to look like he's grabbing something. And then I sharpened out the inner edge of the claw to make sure whatever he does grab isn't something for a very long time. Then using an airbrush I gave it all a coat of grey primer and the main structure a coat of bright bronze. I used a strip of cardstock painted gunmetal grey to cover up those edges of the foam core. And this looks especially good on the claws, where that second colour really makes them pop. Because I liked the gunmetal grey so much before, and also it was looking really boring just one colour, I cover all of the extra greebly bits in a gunmetal grey and a bright silver. And with that little tail, this guy's going to move 30 feet per round. That's like his whole size. It was far too shiny and far too new. So I came through with a mix of black and umber wash and covered pretty much everything in this. Really trying to focus on the cracks and the crevices where the most shadows would be. I also use a little bit of a green mix to mix up some rust around the connector joints. Because this is meant to be a little window, I come through with a really dark blue and fill in that. And then I'll cover the bars in a bronze again. For the base, I use some washed sand, and I just mix that up into a texture paste using PVA glue and a bit of water. And then I'll take that and put that on every area which is not rocks. And using that slurry, you can kind of make it look like wave-rolled sand. I really wanted to add some more color and vibrance, so I got these aquatic plants. They're fake plants for fish tanks, and just ripped them apart and pieced together my own seaweed. And then for a little bit more color, I have these tiny little seashell beads and I glue them onto the sand. Who would have thought grooming a sea bush would be this hard? They just won't stay where I want them to. Finally, I used some fluorescent green on the eyes. I didn't like the goblin green I used before. The fluorescent green really gives it another color pop. Now, let's go see what our pirate friends got up to with this giant enemy crab. No, Captain! Don't shoot! It's us!
Yahoo! What are you doing up there, you bastards? And where'd you get that crab?
This is by far one of the biggest and one of the coolest things that I've made to date, and I'm so glad that I was able to share it with you. I really like to have playability at the forefront of a lot of the things that I make, and with the posable arms, the movable eyes, and the removable door, this has a lot of play potential on the table. And even if not used as an enemy crab or an allied crab, it still looks like a great looking diorama and has a lot of emotion in this little robot. If you liked this video, then like this video and subscribe to see more. And by Jove, if you know what the use of an exhaust port is underwater, please tell me. Wouldn't it just fill up with water and flood? I don't know. Let me know.